As you look at the slide called Miracles in the Ancient World, remember as you read the article that you needed to read for this assignment that people really believed miracles took place. There wasn't any doubt, and it wasn't seen as something out of the natural order. In fact, it was completely within the control of God or the gods, depending on what religion you followed. Another point to remember as you look at this article and look at the question of miracles in the New Testament is the fact that miracles are not always used, or the stories are not always used in the Gospels in the same way and in the Christian tradition. So, for instance, when I say used, I mean that the authors put these stories in their Gospels as a way of making a particular theological point. So with that in mind, take a look at the Gospel of John. We talked earlier in the semester about the Gospel of John having 7 signs as the basis for its gospel, or source for that gospel material. But in the Gospel of John, the miracles are always used to say something theologically about who Jesus was and what his role was in the world, and how his miracles confirmed something that they believed not only about Jesus, but also about God. There is a connection in the Synoptic Gospels between the way that Jesus heals people and the point the Gospel writers are trying to make about Jesus having the power to forgive sin. They believe that only God could forgive sin, and that healing was not really possible unless that particular sin was being dealt with. And in fact, some people spent much of their lives wondering what sin it was that they committed when they found themselves disabled or sick or having lost a loved one. In one example in John, the point of Jesus healing Lazarus in John 11 is to prove that Jesus has power over death. But in the Synoptics, there is a story of Jesus healing a paralytic who was, the crowd was so massive in the room where Jesus was at that nobody could get in. This paralytic's friends lowered him through the roof right in front of Jesus, and Jesus makes some remark about this paralytic being forgiven of his sins. When the religious authorities who were there with him heard about this or saw this, Jesus proved that he could forgive sin by healing this man. He claims that he forgave this guy's sin, and then he heals him as a way of proving that that's something he could really do. And so people who doubted that he had actual power from God, or that he was from God, had a tough time explaining how Jesus could forgive sin if he in fact could heal people. For Paul, you read in his letters in some places a couple of remarks which seem to say that one of the ways he was able to start churches in his ministry was to perform some kind of miraculous act. We don't know exactly what that miraculous act was. He doesn't say. But what he does want to say is that this miraculous act, whatever he did, shows that God was behind what he was doing, that God approved what he was doing and gave him power to do what he was doing. And that's why the people in the church ought to pay attention to what he's saying, because he has that divine power. And it's interesting in Paul that for all of the miracles that Jesus did, Paul never mentions any of them. He mentions his own miracles, but he does not mention any of the miracles of Jesus, which makes people wonder how much Paul really knew about the gospel stories that we have in the New Testament.